It's not driven by government. It's not driven by great commercial needs. We really have to push it all the way ourselves. And it shows that everything is possible if you just want it bad enough.
Hello, everyone. This is the Space Cafe podcast, and I'm Marcus. So here's a pretty crazy project to build a house on the moon. Not a moon house, a regular house like you would see it on Earth. And that crazy project is becoming a reality as we speak and will be placed on the moon in very short time. In fact, that house is already en route in transfer to the moon. And it all originated with a crazy idea by a crazy Swedish artist. Mikael Genberg is his name. And together with his business associate, space engineer Emil Vinterhav, they first, when they had the idea, they had a big laugh, and because they never believed that something like this would be feasible and could happen. And at some point now, a couple of years later, we're here now talking about this moon house becoming a reality. And by the way, a moon house, when I talk about a moon house, you know those Swedish houses, the wooden houses with the red paint? It's exactly what we're talking about. It's unbelievable. So without further ado, please make sure you're sitting comfortably, or you're having I don't know, wherever you're listening to this, you're having all the attention to that episode, which is, in my opinion, the epitome of an inspirational conversation to have. Thank you, Mikael. Thank you, Emil, for your time. Let's go.
Where is Moonhouse right now?
Approaching the moon. It's actually, apparently it's quite soon going into lunar orbit, which has been a long trip for that little house. It's been like 1.1 million kilometers out in space before turning around again.
Why is it taking so long? Because, I mean, like, this is not the shortest cut to the moon. It's taken, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months? What's going on?
4.5, 4.5 months. I think that I've asked all the engineers, and I do have the answer, but I think that the Emil will be better equipped as a space engineer to actually answer that.
Simple. We want to save gas. That's what we're doing. We're taking the long way around to find we're saving mass. We're saving propellant by going a long way around, swinging by the moon, and then coming back for the optimal approach, I would say.
And reaching, as I understood it, 1.1 million kilometers out, there's an area where the gravitation from the sun and the moon and the earth kind of triangulates and makes things stop. So it actually holds, and so the energy in order to go back is extremely small. So you go back and you go down, and I suppose you go slower back, and now it's approaching the moon again.
It can be even more elaborate than that. Yeah, it's even more elaborate than that. Yes, when you get out there, we need to do a course correction in order to get into the lunar orbit to really target the moon. If we go direct, we'd have to brake. Like the Apollo landings, they went in 3.5 days. So they put a lot of energy into going to the moon, and then they put a lot of energy or a lot of fuel into stopping by the moon. You can do it. You can go just so you reach the moon, and then it's a bit more efficient. But this is sort of, you're going out way out to the moon, and then you do this course correction. And then you can really target the soft approach to getting there. You can basically fall into orbit around the moon by going a long way around.
Great.
Can I just before that ask you a really question about that? Because one thing that's kind of troubling me with this journey that takes 4.5 months, wouldn't it be as easy to, when you release the lander from the rocket, so to speak, when you start the engines to go towards the moon, couldn't you just go very slowly? So you just use a little bit of energy, and you take 4.5 months just to go slowly to the moon, instead of increasing the speed, going out, and then coming back.
The moon takes 28 days to go around the Earth. And if we say the optimal, or what is called a Hohmann transfer, the quickest way, the what would seem to be the most obvious way to go to the moon would take half of that. So around 2 weeks, 14 days. So that's the quickest. But still, you cannot just start with a couple of millimeters per second or 1 meter per second and then think it's going to go slower. You need to kick yourself into a high orbit so you don't fall down too soon. The moon is high up there, and you're trying to throw yourself up there. And if you're not throwing hard enough, you'll fall back before you reach the moon.
I love that conversation. It sounds like very genuine. I almost cannot believe that this is a real conversation between the two of you, because the Moonhouse is already in approaching the moon. So it sounds like you have never talked about this before. So great job.
No, we did talk about it, and I asked a lot of the people from MySpace as well, and they give me the same story. Just that I'm from a totally different background, and I'm super intrigued by the mathematics around this way of traveling towards the moon and going out 1.1 million and then coming back. But when you're not a mathematician or you don't really understand it, then I have to ask the same question many times. Could you just go slower towards the moon? But now Emil answered it quite good. I think that you can't really go that slow. But I just have to ask again and again, in order to get.
You ask the questions in a different way, and I try to answer them.
That's true.
and
I always try to explain it. I try to explain it to people as well, and I do try to explain it. And when I tried to explain it now, Emil said, well, it's a little more elaborate than that. So, I understand that I need more always.
Oh, but you do a good job, Mikael.
More knowledge in order to actually explain it to people. Then again, the people that I explain it to, they don't know anything about it. So it's the good thing I don't know too many space engineers.
No, love it. Let's go back. Let's go back to how it all started. Maybe give me a little bit of a primer into when it started and how the two of you got together, and how and why does anyone want to place a house on the moon? How did it start?
I have to take that one. I always say that it started out with reading an article in a Swedish newspaper. It said, now Sweden goes to the moon. It actually started before that, because I read an article, somebody said, but you said that 1 year earlier. So I had this dream and this fascination about the Swedish red house with white corners. I mean, you've been to Sweden several times. You've seen it. Some villages just look crazy. I mean, it's in Sweden, that is the monument that we have. The monument of Sweden is the red house and this paint. And I think we are the only country in the world that actually has a facade color that is so monumental as this red color. And I was playing with that. I was doing, I had built a tree house, red with white, and it looked really weird. And then I built an underwater hotel room also with the red house on top of it. But even before that, I was looking into this symbol as a good mix of survival and beauty, if you want. I mean, architecture is really interesting in that aspect. I think that it combines those two in a really, it makes it kind of an optimal expression for human culture. And so I was playing with that, and I don't know when I got the idea, but I somehow I thought that placing a house like that on the surface of the moon, that would be the ultimate piece of art. I absolutely did not believe that ever would be possible to do. When I read that article, Now Sweden Goes to the Moon, it was about Sweden was allowed to build the construction around the first lunar orbiter called Smart 1, and they did, and it was launched, I think, in 2003. But before that, I just, I had this idea about, maybe I could, all of a sudden it was tangible. Somebody in Sweden was actually working towards the moon. And I had the idea, and I asked my friends about it and said, "You're absolutely nuts. That will never happen." My brother even said, "If you ever succeed with putting a house on the moon, I promise you, I will walk backwards every time I see you." I will
Very
take that
good.
up with him quite soon. He will having to start walking backward. And so I had the idea, and I did confront my friends. They said, "You're crazy," but they were also intrigued by that craziness, and that's something that followed this project. I think that it is something that should be impossible for me, living in a small industrial Swedish town, to actually be able to touch the moon. But and I've been watching the moon now for 25 years, thinking it can't be impossible. It can't be impossible. And then I sometimes think it is impossible, and then it can't be impossible. And then we started working on it after a couple of years, and it really took some speed when we got some money in. We started working with the Swedish Space Corporation. Emil was working there. Emil was handed the what would you call it, the producer or the
project manager. The project. I was handed the project.
Yes, you handed the project with towards the and we had a really nice. It was actually a great curve. We were at that time there were no other commercial rides to the moon or anything like that. So our plan was to construct a Swedish unmanned moonlander. And of course, the budget was crazily so big that I just said, okay, because it's just a lot of money. And so, but when it was a tremendous journey, actually. NASA also got in touch and said, "We heard that that you have a project in Sweden. Would you like to come and tell us about it?" And we said, "Yeah, let's do that."
Wow.
So Emil and I and a couple of other guys went to NASA Ames Research Center, and they eventually said, "I think we think you should go with us." And that reduced the cost, of course, immensely. We got home, and we were almost heroes in the space community, because at that time NASA didn't actually work with private companies, at least not in Europe. But then the financial crisis came. I don't know if you
2008.
saw that down. Yeah, and that was all of a sudden, it was just crazy, and we couldn't even speak to companies because we were since it was quite a lot of money. We were talking to companies about sponsoring ships and being a part of something Swedish. We tried to pull all the threads and all the stories in order to get the money in. And at that time, when the financial crisis came, it just went totally dead. We couldn't speak to anyone. And so we had a down-facing curve. And then 2013, 14, we had a ride again that was quite interesting. And people sometimes ask me, how is it possible for you to keep this idea alive for so long? And I said, it's not me, it's the idea itself.
Exactly.
And it actually was Emil that found this possibility of maybe going with the Japanese company iSpace through a now a mutual friend. At that time, somebody who was working with Emil, which you can tell more about, Emil. But did that answer your question about how it started? I mean, it's a long story, basically. But I mean, it was. I mean, if you are, and normally I just I talk to people that are not from the space industry, and I ask them, if you had an idea like this, how would you try? How would you even try?
Yeah.
And that could be a question to you, Marcus, as well. I mean, how would you do it? But the only way to do it is talk to the people because this is nothing that you would even dream about trying to do yourself. So it's all about getting together and finding people. And the most intriguing thing, I think, is that of course, a lot of people said that's crazy, I'm not interested at all. But a lot of people also were intrigued by the size of it. It was bigger than any person. And even bigger than the companies in Sweden. So they were intrigued, and they said, I've done a lot of things in my life, but putting a house on the moon, never done that. I could actually join that.
before we get into the physics and the engineering of it all, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago when the first money started to come and flow in. How do you pitch such a project to anyone out there and then expect to receive money for it?
That's a good question. We had a really, really good guy he was a CEO of a big company in Sweden. And I remember the first meeting we had with him. He sat on behind his desk, and we told him about it. And he was selling, he was having a big copper industrial company. And he said, "You know what, guys? I'm sitting on this side of the table, and I'm working with selling copper, and you're sitting on that side of the table. You're selling a house on the moon. I just feel that I'm sitting on the wrong side of the table." And so he started So he started working with us. He died in Corona, I'm afraid, which is a big sadness. But he worked, and he was really good at he had a lot of friends also in the industry. But one of the companies, I had to invite every single person in the board to lunch in my studio. And it was a big board. It's like 20 people. But they all came and they're like, "Really? Okay." But then eventually, I suppose they got enough lunch money. So they said, "Okay,
fantastic.
Let's put $1 million in."
Fantastic. Emil, how did you get involved in all of this?
I was the only crazy person crazy enough at the Swedish Space Corporation to take this. So they're sort of, this is a project for Emil. And I begin, yes, that's
is
just
this a good
alley.
sign? Is this a good sign or a bad sign if someone says, "This is a project, let's hand it over to Emil"?
I'd like to take difficult and challenging projects. So it's not the first time. And sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't. And if they go well, it's really rewarding. And this one was beyond that, because I felt it was, I've done science projects and infrastructure projects, and they're all good. They all benefit humanity. But this project would connect to people. I've seen so many golden projects, white and gold hero projects, but this one was really for everybody, and that really triggered me to get in touch.
And Emil, apart from Mikael and myself, you're the one in the room who understands the physics of space and the engineering of it all. So, what was your job description back in the day when you first heard of the project?
Oh, I was a bit sort of fuzzy around the edges. The best definition of the project was actually a small painting that Mikael had done. Also, the scene on the moon in the form of a postcard way back when there were postcards. And it had a scene on the moon, the house, a little Swedish flag, and then the earth in the background. Generate that was the mission.
Fix it. Let's fix it. But I love the fact that Emil, at least at several occasions, said that of all space projects he's ever worked with, this was the most important one. That I love. Yeah, because Emil he's running. Are you running 2 or 3 companies today, Emil? Of your own.
3 is a good number. Yes.
3 is a good number. Yeah. So I think it's a good sign that he continues to say that this is the most important space project so far in his life.
And now it's the most high profile as well. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Wow. No, so yes, but I still. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead.
No, I think it's still most important. The project that has the potential of changing to having the greatest impact. And I just love the idea that it's in its small size, its humbleness. It's so very different from other projects. It doesn't have any moving parts. It doesn't have all the trimmings of a normal space project. It's not very technically complicated, but still, because it's so different, just having this shape in space, these colors in space, the budget constraints are really tough, and it's all driven by a very small team of private persons, so to say. It's not driven by government. It's not driven by great commercial needs. We really have to push it all the way ourselves, and it shows that everything is possible if you just want it bad enough.
Fantastic. Let's go into the details of the house. So what is the house made of? How big, how small is it? Does it have furniture, windows, a roof, I guess? But let's go into details about the actual building.
Can I just say that from the beginning, my idea was that it has to be big enough for a human to be standing inside of it. So the idea was to have a house that was like 4 by 3 meters, and then we, sometimes we talked about 3 by 2 meters, and I thought that's too small. That was maybe my biggest mistake to think that it actually had to harbor a human being. But the idea was to throw out like a box, and we did prototypes of something that could actually build itself with fill something up, and it tended to look like a tent, and we did understand that we're going to have a hard time making this look good. But I was consistent with that thought, and then when Emil had this contact with iSpace, he said we can only can only be as big as this. It's got to be in the front of a car. It can only weigh 100 grams. And I said that's too small. And then Emil said, but Mikael, you've always only talked about this image, and there's no reference. There's no point of reference on the moon. You want the iconic picture of a small red house standing on the surface of the moon. As yes, doesn't matter what size it is, and this is much more climate,
sustainable.
Sustainable. And I said, yeah, okay. But then I realized that it was more than right. Actually, I think it's so much more poetic now that it's small, because it's so much more annoying to people. People are annoyed sometimes that it's small, and they say, there's more. And I go like, yeah, it is on Earth, yes. But the thing is that the art creates with the combination of the house is basically nothing. The house is just, here on Earth. But on the moon, it will be like Carl Sagan said about Earth, it's the pale blue dot.
Yes.
This will be the pale red dot on the moon. And the size really is it actually, I would say size doesn't matter, but it does. And I think actually it's also becomes more childish in a way. And one of my target groups is the 8-year-olds, also the 8-year-olds within us, and it becomes fragile also from a mental point of view, that it isn't big and well, we succeeded, it's just a symbol. You can happy to fill in there, Emil. You know more.
When when I got the picture in my hand, the requirement image, and the first thing I did was I called Mikael and we set up a meeting in Västerås. Me and Håkan, his friend, we had pizzas and we discussed if there were more requirements. And there were 2 requirements more came out of that meeting. One was that it should be big enough for someone to be inside. So that was the one thing. And the second one was you can't land it upside down. So those 2, I got to change the first one of those. The second one I'm still worried about. So let's see what we have.
So it shouldn't. So you're worried about it landing on its roof?
We have been paid very much attention to it not doing so to say.
Yeah.
But it is. It's like everything on the moon. Many are challenged to land on the moon, and many have failed. Put it that way. It's a challenge, and we will be very nervous.
If it would land on the roof, you would take some pictures, and actually inside it says, "Oh shit." No, it doesn't.
Does it? Does it for real?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it. By the way, on my way to our interview and our recording right now, on my way on the public transport, I was thinking, how would I construct that house so it doesn't fall over? It will always be in place properly. So I love that challenge already. I don't have a solution. It wouldn't matter anyways anymore because it's already en route. But it's a fun challenge. So,
but if I can add more there, I think to the whole picture there, iSpace takes us 400,000 kilometers to the moon by way of a detour of 1.1 million kilometers. They land on the moon, they take us another few meters outside the lander, and then we are responsible for the 8 last centimeters. So out of more than 1.1 million kilometers, we have 8 centimeters to worry about. And those are very worrisome with the centimeters.
The most important 8 centimeters, though.
Definitely.
Before we get to that, let's talk about the actual the house itself, what it is made of. Does it have to be lunar proof, moon proof, or is it designed from wood and the traditional Swedish paint?
That's interesting. One of the first questions you get, how do you get the people up there to build it? That's one of the questions I frequently get on building a house on the moon. No,
you're kidding.
That's sort of. But are they sending astronauts? No, we're sort of. It's robotic.
Of course, yes, construction workers.
Yeah, and that would be amazing if we could do that with planks and hammers and nails and stuff. That would be amazing. But
it will be the next project.
Yeah, and then we had this whole evolution from the unfoldable, deployable house, and now we're working with a very, very interesting company doing 3D printed material. So it's 3D printed aluminum. With we had them to push their capabilities to really to have a very thin wall size on the house to keep mass down. So 3D printed aluminum to the correct shape. And then Mikael has hand painted it with paint that we had to qualify ourselves to be compatible with launch. Because
what does that mean?
Typically in launching things into space, you don't want to disturb other equipment on board, right? So if a paint is typically pigments in some sort of a solution or an epoxy. And you don't want this epoxy or this glue to start evaporating and deposit on other pieces of equipment, causing either distortions in the optics or other disturbances anywhere. And it shouldn't flake. So we have tested it for that. We found a paint that could withstand the stress of being launched, that would not outgas in according to standard, or they would keep within standards of outgassing. So now we are proudly the only ones, I believe, or one of very few, that have a space-qualified paint that is not white or black.
Well, there you got your business model.
There we go.
It's a small niche. It's a small niche, but it could be good.
Is it? By the way, is it true that the traditional, the reddish colored paint in Sweden is connected to the copper industry, like the because some of the products or the waste products from copper mining is that color? Is that true?
Correct. It's from one mine only. And they took up. This is like a rest product. They have piles of it, and it still are the same piles, and they're not using that copper mine anymore. So it's quite old rest product that they're using, and when that's finished, there will be no more red painted house. They will all be after that. They will all be white.
This is very poetic.
But no. It's called the Falu Red. It's from Falun. It's a town in Sweden.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Great. That's a great story. Sorry to... No, go ahead.
No, that's lovely. The painting itself was it was a bit of an issue because we did have maybe the possibility of some companies that could create paint for us. It would be super expensive, but they wanted them to, and I said, no, I really would like to paint it myself, with brushes and so on. And we found this paint, and they said, yeah, you have to have a clean room. And I said, what is that? And then, one of these rooms that are plastics. And I said, okay. So I bought this plastics that you use when you paint at home. So I just plastered in the whole room. And I bought this kind of clothes that covers you up and a gas mask. And I asked iSpace, is this okay? And they said, yeah, that looks good. Looks good. It's my kitchen in a house that is actually also red, built 1758. So it's a lot of things that is quite kind of poetic anyway.
I picture, have you ever seen Breaking Bad, like the series? Like,
sure.
it's like the meth lab in your own room, right?
Exactly like the meth lab that's a very good
I don't know anyone with a meth lab at home, but Mikael is one of only 2 people I know who's got a clean room at home.
Yeah.
All right, so it's hand painted. So you mixed the color or found the color somewhere, and then you hand painted it.
Yeah, it's a ceramic paint, and it had to then be inside an oven, very strictly going up to a certain high level of temperature, and then very slightly go down. So I found an oven that could do that, and they let me borrow it.
What's on the inside of the building? What's on the inside of the building of the house?
The inside is the only thing inside is that we did write down I think 2 Bitcoin numbers, and then we threw the numbers away. So if you ever go up there, you'll be really rich, or maybe we didn't.
I love it.
But it's yeah.
I love it. Did you leave any secret message, like a personal message? I was thinking on my way to the interview, I was like, how would I hide messages inside such an art project? Maybe like inside the color, there's a pattern, or underneath the color or whatnot. So now is time for truth. What kind of message did you leave inside?
Of course we did. But if we would tell you, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. Somebody will have to go there. We had a guy, Erik Imamura. He was employed by us for a year, an engineer. He was creating the structures and so on. And he told his children, who are now like 6-7 years, he said, when you guys turn 50, if I'm alive, I will take you guys to the house on the moon. I
Fantastic.
think I think maybe he will, or maybe he won't.
I know for a fact. Yeah. About the secret, I know for a fact you scratched something down on the inside, and I couldn't read it. So maybe that's the secret, right?
Wow, what a story!
In that house.
What a story!
Definitely.
Great. So you together with Emil, you got all the ingredients and the coloring and the messaging and the Bitcoin codes and whatnot, everything together. Where did the money come from for this project?
So that's an excellent question. I'm so happy to be able to answer it, because when we started, it was such a big budget. And when I told you we wanted companies to come in, it was always a bit distracting how to actually allow something, because we wanted it still to be art. And now, this time we said, let's make a listed company, and let's see if we can find shareholders. And so we basically went out to what you normally call family, friends, and fools, and asked them if they wanted to invest in a house on the moon. And at least to my big surprise, it actually went quite fast, and people were so it's private money, and it's it's put in without any request of any, logotypes or symbols or anything like that. No state money, no nothing that people who pay tax would have to be irritated over or anything like that. It's just 70 people who are actually going to own this house on the moon.
Wow. Fantastic story. And then you already mentioned you were approached by NASA. How did that work? I mean, like, did the phone just ring, or did you get an email in your inbox? How did that work?
It was actually I think I think it was Fredrik Bruun who had the communication first, and he said that he had been speaking to people from NASA, and then they reached out to us. It wasn't just like a fluke message, but they were intrigued and they asked us to come. Now it didn't lead to anything because of the financial crisis, and also NASA got in big troubles with the financial crisis at that time. But it was also a very good signal for us that we're onto something that is actually carries something of interest, even for NASA.
Yes.
And especially when the crisis struck later, we had that sort of as encouragement to weather all that time when it was really difficult.
Emil, what is it like to work with an artist? Does it drive you crazy or inspire you?
It inspires me. It rarely drives me crazy. Sometimes I get the ideas that come from Mikael are sort of taken out of the blue, but as an engineer, we're very much standardized. We're doing things the right way in space. We cannot afford to fail. And that sometimes causes us to be too boxed in our thinking. So getting that outside perspective of someone who hasn't done it before, doesn't know the standards, and just thinks freely, and this is how I would do it. And then you get that, you get inspired by it, and you start to think yourself, why am I doing this? And it can actually be something that propels you to do better things.
We had
things better.
In an earlier episode, we had a curator from the Austrian Pavilion at the Art and Architecture Biennale in Venice. And we spoke about the importance of art in science and engineering, and in our case, in the space industry. And I think this also holds true for what you're experiencing, that the artist asks questions that a scientist may not ask because they make no sense for the actual science, but they challenge you as a scientist to think beyond structural or trusted boundaries. And I think this is why in the United States, I don't know about right now, but there is the A in STEM coming back, art. So STEM turning into STEAM. And I think this is a beautiful symbolism of what has been separated for too long. So to bring back the artist into those traditional scientific fields. So perhaps it was a little lengthy now, but I can see from how I perceive you interacting with one another that this is a very inspiring and fruitful collaboration.
I like that.
I love it.
Yeah, I think so too. And to me, I like the idea of, you say bringing art back to science. I think it's bringing science and engineering back to people, to get them to connect with something. So it's two sides of the same thing, but very much in what I think about this project.
Yes.
We had one guy that after that became a shareholder in the company. He asked another guy who was asking him, do you want to be a shareholder in the company? And he said, but is it really relevant to put a house on the moon? And then our mutual friend Hans, Anders, he said, we won't know that before we put it there.
Yes.
So then he came in. But I can honestly say that I think it's already proven to be relevant in that sense that when we launched the house, January 15, 1/11 at Kennedy Space Center, we had a tremendous media attention, which is great. But the most interesting thing was that people were inspired enough to create songs, send us songs, and a lot of children, in schools make drawings. There was this school bus driver from Ohio. He said that, this is so great, and I've been telling all the children about it, and some kids in Sweden, some school, they made furnitures for the house, small furnitures that they wanted to send. And at that time, when that happens, I really feel that it is relevant.
Yes.
That people get inspired with something because there is a lot of things happening in space, and people don't really. I've understood that now that we have quite weak relationship to space. Actually, I mean, and understanding. And people say, why should you do things in space? That's absurd because we're already so much doing things in space. It's just that it's not visible. We're not communicating to people's hearts, and so I think this is why when Emil says that we bring space to people and people to space, or humans to, and so it's and it's so lovely to feel that it's inspiring. And I think when it's landing, it let's see. I mean, it will be standing there then for thousands and thousands and maybe millions of years, and the importance might actually grow in time. Who knows? And I understand that people has quite a poor understanding. I mean, a lot of people ask me, how do you actually get the house to stand there? Because they think as soon as you're in space, there's no gravity. Everything is just floating around, And so I have to explain how the moon works. And so it's also, I think it's also could be an educational importance in it. And and when you're interested in space, you follow what's happening in space, but a lot of people, they have no idea. No idea. I mean, like Emil said, are people going there to actually build a house? They have no idea about the complexity, and neither did I. When Emil said we have to make it in aluminium, I said, yeah, how hard can that be? So I went to the hardware shop and I bought a plate, and I just, and I made it in one piece, and then I bought some glue, and because Emil said, we have to do, I said, how hard can that be? So I made this house, and Emil said, yeah, okay, we can try it. So we took it to the KHTH, the technical university in Stockholm, and checked it, and it just broke, just immediately. So, but it was a first.
Is it the one that you built fell apart, and then Emil had to take over, right? Okay.
No, he was already
I like that story.
It was like that, but I was just too eager. So I said, why can't we just take a piece of plate and make it? And Emil was patient, like he would be to his children. So he said, no, that's okay, Michael.
It was a very good test. I mean, it showed you just how dramatic it is on a launch vehicle. Yes. But I think this, what you're talking about with where everybody in space is screaming about space, and it's really hard to break through because we're all screaming the same thing. Like, look, it's another satellite. It's fantastic. It's like even the Apollo missions, where sort of people didn't report about them after the 6th landing because they said, okay, they're on the moon again. I mean, that's sounds crazy now, but that's how it was. And here we have a mission that really is on the side of everything, and with the house on the moon, it's so personal that once you see it as anyone can see it, you get to stand there with the house and look back on Earth. That is really, that's poetry to me. There's
I think
there was
I think what's different about this project as opposed to, I mean, like there is human stuff on the moon and has been for decades now. But what's different now is that we can relate to a house a lot more than to a lander or to a poop bag or to whatever is left on the moon. So I think this is a different kind of poetry that we're seeing here, because we all live in houses and we have no connection to landers. So this is why this is a completely different bag.
A house, at least in Sweden, a house is all about life and death, isn't it? I mean, it's
you're born in it.
It's a part of existence
Yes.
in a real sense, and a lunar lander isn't.
Yes.
So that's what it's about, to actually see the moon, but also, of course, see the Earth. Like it's like the house is
Yes.
quite like Earth in a sense.
It's truly crazy, because you mentioned our understanding or non-understanding of many things. It's truly crazy to picture the 21st century that we live in and how little we know about so many things. So, for example, we all have seen the moon in the sky and we know what it looks like, but we have absolutely no understanding how far away the moon is. It's crazy far. I'm not telling you anything new, but people just feel like you got this huge balloon out there. It's just in your neighborhood. It's just not in your neighborhood. It's just huge and very, 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 very far away. And I think this is also something that most of the people, including myself, for the first time I saw the actual distance, understand. And there's so many things we don't understand.
Yes.
Totally agree with you, and it's changed my life. It changed my life in the way I see, especially. I mean, you just look at the moon and you realize how people thousands of years were looking at it, just astounded. What the hell is that thing? And I think that the problem is now that I think people were more interested in the moon at that time of mankind than we are today. We're just so interested in our cell phones.
Yes.
And so uninterested
We're looking downward.
in what's actually. Yes.
We're looking.
Don't
exactly.
look up.
Don't look up.
Don't look. I don't know. When we're talking about this, over the years I've been doing this with Mikael for 15 years now. And I've met so many people, and I've told so many people about this, and every time, first they're okay, that sounds crazy. And then most people, they turn around and say, isn't it like this? Or it's really amazing technology, or imagine that. Do you want to have a flag there? Or wouldn't you want to furnish it? What curtains would you want to have? And everybody gets their own idea of what they want to do with the house. It's really, it's amazing to hear everyone's idea what the house is. To me, that's why that's the art part of this. It stimulates the thing.
I'm picturing myself right now. If you were to ask me, how would you decorate the inside? What kind of furniture would you want to see inside? Then I'm picturing myself asking those questions like, how many people live in that house? Is it young people? Is it a family? Is it an old couple maybe? How do I see them right now? I see them sleeping next to one another in the sleeping room, in the bed, for whatever reason. I'm picturing this right now. But then this produces quite a bit of inspiration already, how to furniture and breathe life into this place on the inside. Maybe this is one of the reasons you left it empty, for people to fill it with ideas.
Yeah, we can all be there at the same time. It could fill up all. Sometimes people say it's so small, but I say, nah, it's actually too big, because it can actually, everything that is alive on the moon right now will actually be fitted in that house. So, but it's lovely to hear you, Marcus, also talk about it, because it's also inspiring to. I think that the young generation, the children, I think that they are. I mean, we are harmed already so much, or what to say, but also, of course, grown-ups can move their consciousness up to the house. But I think especially children will be able to, to fantasize about what is that house. It's a house on the moon, and that's it would be lovely if it works like that.
Yes.
And it seems that it already does.
So now that the house in our little story that we're telling here is still in Sweden. So we need to get it out of Sweden now, up into orbit. So let's continue with that story. So you got the house finished, you got the design finished, you had the call from NASA. What then? What next?
Next is so we have the design finished. Now we have to test it. I mean, this is a space mission. It's a fully fledged space mission with all the requirements, all the trimmings that need to go into a space mission. So we had to qualify it. It's been shaken. Like the first test was call it a development test. And it was really successful in that it showed that there needs to be serious thought put into the design, sort of a bit more engineering. So first we did analysis, we did tests to verify the analysis, both in terms of mechanical, and we tested it in vacuum. We tested it for the thermal loads that it will see when it's still mounted on the rover in space, on the moon. We've done actual drop tests with the lunar simulator in Cologne. So going around with the rover in Cologne, dropping the house on a simulated moon surface to verify that it actually lands on the right keel. So we are quite confident that it will. So we're following up a lot with this to define the landing site that we really need. But it's been tested, qualified. We had a review with iSpace that said, okay, so it looks like you tested everything. Everything is okay. We delivered the house. We've made 3 houses, by the way. First, a qualification house that's been with iSpace for quite some time. They've tested it on the rover, not in different space environments. They sent it to Japan to test it on the lander. And then from there, sort of mounting the flight rover, doing acceptance tests with the rover on the lander, and then sent over to Florida to be mounted.
How did those iSpace testing folks and NASA, etc., react to all this? Is this just a piece of cargo? So it could be any kind of cargo, 100-gram cargo, or are they like making fun of it also that they are now dealing with a house?
Not.
Okay,
it's quite the opposite. It's when we pitched the idea. First, I met with Antoine, the engineer at KTH, or he's a student at KTH and working at iSpace at the same time in Luxembourg. So that's how we met up. I asked him if he could take a house to the moon, and he said, "Of course we can." And then we continued the discussion from there. And then he brought it to his team in Luxembourg, and we came down there, and they were amazed. We were really well welcomed, and it felt like they had adopted the house. But this is our house. We really like it. And I think it's been the same thing when the house has been around Europe and then in Japan. There's a lot of attention on the house, and maybe more than they would really care to admit. But in different ways, we hear these story snippets that trickle out to us. So that you had the Archduke of Luxembourg visiting iSpace, seeing the rover. And he was like, that house is really cool. And he's invited us to come and, he wants to be more connected to the house, put it that way, as I understand.
This is interesting. Very interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I think that they have iSpace has been absolutely marvelous. They have put in a lot of extra energy into this project in the sense that I don't think that they would have done with other project, but not with every other project. I think they were really supportive, and it's been so many weird meetings, weird for me. I remember one when we talked about having one of the washers becoming 0.1 millimeters thinner. And I was just thinking, could you just turn it a little bit harder then? And then it was 0.1 millimeters or not. There's so many interesting, and they have been I think they have been really supportive in every aspect.
Yes.
And we went
Michael, what is it
Yes.
like for you as an artist to work with space engineers and space scientists? I mean, like, as you just mentioned, they're talking about nanometers and stuff. And you, as an artist, maybe there's more room for maneuver now and then. So how does that work together? How does it feel like to work with those guys?
This is actually my dream scenario. Normally, when I worked as more like in the more traditional art scene, I felt that it was secluded and lonely, and it wasn't. So when I started I built a tree house and stuff like that, and I needed to have people around me because I didn't have any knowledge about building or climbing or anything like that. And this project is the dream project also, just having the need to get people in with a lot of different kind of competences, not only space engineering, but marketing people or just people who are thinking in new ways. And we have this broad community. It's been such a treat to work with people like Emil, but also we had some sports people involved, and it's just quite a weird bunch of individuals, but really competent and really interesting people, all of them, and having the opportunity of working with iSpace, and even if I don't understand what they're saying on the meetings, it's really a treat to be just listening to the complication, to how complex it is to do anything in space. And my first move is to say, let's make a small house and send it. And it turned out to be really so much more difficult than I understood. Wow. And that's the value, I think. The value is that it's taken so long time and it's been so difficult. And now it's going to, the most difficult part is probably coming up now on the 6th of June when we're landing.
So you've been building this house for 25 years now.
That's correct.
So we're getting closer. We're getting closer to launch. So what was the role of NASA in all of this? Because you had SpaceX as the launcher, you had iSpace as the ones doing that lunar landing mission. And where was NASA in all of this?
Yes. What is NASA doing in all this? NASA was an encouragement back when we did the original study. After that, NASA, I don't know what eyes NASA has on us. It was a really important encouragement they gave us. But from there on, right now, it's a strictly, we have the Moonhouse Inc. or AB that is totally responsible for manufacturing and financing the house through its shareholders. And then we have iSpace responsible for taking us to put the lander and the rover, for placing us there for the operations, and SpaceX to bring us into space. So those are the only ones involved at the moment. NASA was, they were very inspirational, and they were really supporting, and they put us on the right direction and really encouraged us to do the right thing.
Great. Is there anything we should still talk about before we come to launch day at Kennedy Space Center?
I want to cycle back to what Mikael said about, or the question about working with engineers from an artist's perspective. To me, this project, or any space project that you want to make happen, and this I've been with from quite an early phase, but a large part of it is to convince somebody else that it needs to be done. And I think there, Mikael started in exactly the right way, because they started with networking, getting people interested and seeing where there's a way forward. And half of the space engineering is talking. So talk, a lot of getting stuff into space is talking, and then you need to make it happen with engineering. But I think you have that part you did excellently, Mikael, and I helped you put it there.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things to be said about the journey before launch date, but I think the launch itself, if we can reach that, it was an extraordinary experience. We were 8 people from Sweden. I think we actually were even more. You know that iSpace is a Japanese company, but they have a subsidiary in Europe, in Luxembourg, and one in the United States. So there was quite a lot of people from the United States, but I think we were more Swedes than Japanese even on that launch, which was the second launch of iSpace. The first one crashed on the moon, as you probably know, in April 23. So that launch date was and they were only allowed to take one of us to the so-called VIP launch thing. So the other 7 people they were standing on the bridge watching I actually wanted to be more with them then, but somebody had to go to the VIP, and they said, I said, we can do a vote. They said, no, Michael, you should go. And it was extraordinary. On the bus drive up to the launch pad, I was totally, it was exciting, and the moon came up. That's huge, just from the Japanese guys like and there was this guy. He fell asleep in the bus, and I was like, "Are you nuts?" I asked him before, "Did you ever see a launch?" He said, "No," and he was falling asleep. And I said, "How can you be so relaxed?" And then we had the launch was 1:11 American time, and I had to do 3 radio shows, and had the 2 big Swedish television companies at the same time, monitoring me through cameras. So I had 2 cameras, and it was. I don't. Did you? I'm sure you've seen a launch, Marcus.
Yes, I was lucky to have seen a launch at the exact same spot, I think, in October last year.
Oh, it was amazing, though. And then you can imagine how it feels to have a house that you have been sitting in your own house, painting that little house, knowing that it's actually on that huge monster of a rocket.
It's extremely emotional.
It was very emotional. It was very. Yes. You can see that when I sound like an absolute nutcase on television there, because I just don't know what to say. I just go, but it was really emotional, and it went quite. And then all of a sudden, it was in space, and the house has been in space since then. But the launch was amazing, wasn't it, Emil? And the day after, we saw the first launch of Blue Origin, actually.
Oh, New Glenn, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it was very emotional. It was very beautiful. It was a perfect night for a launch under a full moon too.
Oh, fantastic! Fantastic. And ever since it's traveling, the house is traveling.
Yes, it's traveling. We wanted to try to follow it, but we couldn't get. I don't think that they have. Maybe it would have been nice.
You couldn't get an air tag on it.
No, I don't think so. At least we asked, and we couldn't get anything like that. But just looking at
in there.
Yeah, we could have.
But there's no one with an iPhone around.
Nah. But just looking up and seeing, just seeing space and knowing that you have an item that you actually put out there, it's quite strong. It's quite a strong emotion it changes the whole perspective of space, for me, at least. So everyone should have their own house to the moon someday.
What was the landing site selection / the lot for your house? The selection for that place, like, did you get of course, no one owns lots on the moon. So you were free to, like back in the day in the United States when the settlers just rammed in their property tags.
How did that work? So were you assigned a place with the nice view?
That's a pretty... There, you can cycle back there as well. When we did the original story, when we were building a lander, we were free to choose landing sites, and we had... This was the time when we had the big network of people that we met regularly with. And so we had three options. There was the Kepler crater, which is it's a recent crater, so it's got a lot of new sort of undisturbed insides of moon accessible. We had Sinus Iridum, I think it's called, Sea of Rains or Rainbows. It's supposed to be the most, some consider it the most beautiful place on the moon. It's like a mare with a nice cliff around, so you can see the Earth above the cliff, perhaps. And then we had the coordinates of Västerås, where Mikael comes from. And when we presented these sort of in that order, there was a big cheer when we said the coordinates of Västerås, of course. And the funny thing is now we are in the same landing site as iSpace has chosen, because they have their criteria. I think their main driver is for success in landing, to make sure you have a safe and secure landing. And it's quite close to Västerås, the coordinates of Västerås on the map.
Tell me, how does that work with the coordinates of Västerås? So are you translating the coordinates into moon GPS equivalent? Is that right?
Yes, it's not exactly near, but it's quite near, sort of quite near the 60th latitude, right?
But this is pure coincidence, right?
Pure coincidence.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Also the fact that it's going to land on the Swedish National Day is also a coincidence.
The stars aligned. The stars literally aligned.
And
so
with the moon.
And now, where is the house housed right now? Is it in the lander or is it in a rover? And how far from the lander will the actual place be where it will be placed for good for the next 10,000 years?
So now it sits stowed in the rover is pretty much, it can operate either way, but it's the front end, which is not very much distinguishable from the rear end, but we're sitting on the front end stowed, ready to deploy on a bracket between the wheels and just below the front end camera. And that isn't in turn stowed inside the lander. So it's not outside, but inside. It will sort of fold out and be placed on the surface.
So, and iSpace said, we're going to make a couple of trips and you decide on which trip we're deploying the house.
No, that would have been lovely. We wanted to go as soon as possible. They had a rover already on their first mission, but since this was...
No, I meant trips, trip with the rover. So because the rover is going to be traveling on the moon, like to various places, so they may have offered you one of those trips.
Okay, no, so there's going to be one trip. They will not come back to the lander, I think. Maybe they don't really know, but we have... The first day is for making sure everything works and scouting the close vicinity of the lander. And then on the second day, it's the Moonhouse day, where we will go find a place where we can see where we believe it'd be nice to place the house, go around, so that we don't create a lot of tracks in front of the house. Go up to where we believe it's a good spot, nice flat area without any rocks or things that can disturb the landing. We'll release the house and we'll fall down to the moon. Yes, there is gravity on the moon for everyone who doubted it, but it will release and will fall these 8 centimeters, touch down, and it will do it so quite nicely. And then we'll back around and travel in a wide circle back and take the picture from the front.
Wow.
And while we've done that, we also made sure that we have the right pose of the house, so we get good lighting from the sun.
So I'm picturing all this deployment phase. It's like having a coffee mug on the edge of a table, and then this coffee mug gets pushed over the edge, and is designed to land exactly as it stood on the table? Is this the challenge?
It's slightly different. It's got a bracket sort of on front end of the house of the rover like this. There is a bracket sitting like so or like so, and we have the house sitting beneath it, and it's connected with this bracket by a bolt. And we cut the bolt, and the whole house falls down like this.
So okay, so how can you make sure? So what is now the challenge? Is it lands on in the proper way, not on the roof. So how did you solve that challenge?
So there's, one of these release mechanisms, we are pulling apart a titanium bolt. So there's quite a lot of energy going into this. And the fear has been that this would propel the house to bounce off the surface. What it does to prevent this, we have a guiding pin that sits in through a hole in the house on the rover. And when we release it, we induce a vibration of the house onto this pin. So, and that captures all this energy, and it will slowly sort of vibrate down the pin and then drop slowly and nicely to the ground. So it's quite a controlled effect, or quite a controlled procedure. Series of events.
Fantastic.
So that's how it. And then the other thing, when we scout the area, we want to make sure that it's a nice flat surface, and where we can safely think that there are no buried pieces of rock or hard piece of regolith that will make it uneven.
You should is this, by the way, then the end of the art project? So the photo is, or when does it end? Or is it an art project for forever?
That's a good question. What do you think? I don't, it's it could be the start, it could be the end. It so much depends on responses, and does it live in people's minds or doesn't it? Does it die or does it live? It's absolutely out of our control. I don't think we are planning to do anything additional. I have a few ideas that maybe could kind of artistically discuss with the house on the moon. But let's see what happens. First we land, and then we see the response, and then we'll see. But it's like, it's like a painting. The painting is made. So the art piece is kind of, that's finished in a sense. But
what are your best guesses, also maybe from you, Emil, when the degradation process starts? I mean, like, this will start from the very beginning. How long will the house stay in the shape and design and coloring until it starts to degrade under space radiation and moon regolith and whatnot?
It's a very good question. There are two main things that can affect the house. One is meteorites. There's a constant bombardment of meteorites. But they did estimates on this for Apollo, and I think they looked at a 2 square feet area, and the probability of anything hitting that area in a day, and it's 1 in millions. So the house is what, 50th of 2 square feet. So that means it's 50 times more, say 100 million days before it happens. It's it will stand there for a very long time if it's only down to meteorites, or with a great probability. The other thing is the solar radiation. The house is red, and everyone who's owned a red car knows that it's very sensitive to be left out in the sun. It's been tested hard. The paint is made for severe or rough conditions. It's rugged conditions. but you never know. It's hard to test for the long time duration, in the sunlight. And it's also very much harder radiation because there's no protective atmosphere that filters out the ultraviolet. So
what drives me absolutely crazy is the sheer thought that we have that, and I think I already mentioned that a couple of episodes ago, that we have the Voyager spacecraft traveling into the void, and as space is vast and mostly empty, it will live way beyond Earth, planet Earth. So just imagine having something like humans built, like that house on the moon, transcending the lifetime of humanity. This is a thought that we need to wrap our heads around. And I think it's not possible to wrap our head around because this is mind-blowing.
I agree with you.
Surely. So after the next ice age, this will be the only red house in existence.
Yes. No, this is mind-blowing. How does that feel to you? How does that feel to you, Mikael, as an artist? This is the ultimate piece of art because it stays there mostly forever.
Well put. I agree with you. So let's, I try not to think about it too much because it is mind-blowing, but it's also a bit disturbing.
It is.
Thinking about space is also quite disturbing after a while. It's quite terrifying, isn't it?
It is.
Space. It is. I mean, we're so insignificant.
Exactly.
And we are not thinking about our insignificance at all. We think we're so important. But
we think we're the center of the universe. We think
we do.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe this is true in a vast space like space. Like there is no center, but Emil, you know this a lot better than myself. But from a geometry tells us there is no center in the universe. If I'm correct, so it's true and absolutely okay to say we are the centers of the universe. Our own universes, maybe. The house is the center of the universe. Exactly. Yeah, great.
Inside our minds, we all carry a whole universe, don't we?
Yes. Yeah. I'm thinking you should have a copy of that house, exact replica as a traveling exhibition on Earth. That would produce quite a bit of engagement with the art project. Maybe you have it already.
We have an exact copy because we had to make a double. So if something would happen with this one, the second one would have to be done exactly in the same manner.
Stand-in.
So that we do have.
Yeah.
Now we did try it with the droppings and so on, but before we didn't touch it. So we do have a sister.
I could totally see that in museums or as a traveling exhibition. Yeah. Anyways, there is one question that needs to be asked, and that question is, should you have done this in the first place? Because you're putting human litter on the moon. Should we do that?
Yeah, I think so. That's what I think. I don't think it's litter, and I think that we should absolutely do things in space, and I think we should do things that has a poetic human touch to it, so that we can actually make people see and be aware of where we actually are. And that is basically what art is all about as well. All culture is all about retelling the story about what is it to be human, what is reality all about, where are we? That's what culture is all about. If you write a book or if you make a movie or you make art is without speech or text. So it's and if space exploration would be with it, which it isn't, of course, but if we would take away the whole cultural thing from space endeavors, I think we would lose something. So I hope that this could be a starting point also for other similar ideas in order to make it more, let's say, poetic, but tangible, maybe for the human mind. And I do know that people said, "Oh, you're gonna change the whole idea about the moon." And if I do so, then I'm sorry. They still think it's a big, beautiful thing. But sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to watch the moon anymore because I'll only see a red house." Well, then one could say that as art, it actually really works.
It works. Beautiful. Fantastic. There is a question I keep asking my guests, and that is, would you personally be ready to go into space? Maybe visit the moon, visit the landing site, visit your house. Would you do that?
Would you, Emil?
Yes, I would. If it was safe enough.
Yeah,
I would go. Yes.
That's
That's
not,
a good question.
But that's not real.
That's
you
cheating.
You can't say if it would be safe enough. That's cheating.
Okay, no, I would go.
Yeah, I would go too. I wouldn't. I don't think. I think that if you would go to the moon, I think the only thing you would feel is a longing for home, basically. But it would be an incredible experience, and I wouldn't miss it. But but yeah. Some days I think, I don't want to go because you don't really want to go to space. But if somebody would ask, if it would be safe enough, Emil.
No, but I would also like to. I think Buzz Aldrin coined the expression "the magnificent desolation."
Yeah.
I think that would be something to experience, house or not. I would certainly visit the house if I could, but just to see that, being the most alone person in the universe, that would be an experience in itself, I think.
The reason I'm asking is we have a playlist on Spotify called the Playlist for the Aspiring Space Traveler. And so I'm asking you now, because traveling in space is usually a very lonely or boring endeavor because distances are quite vast. So what's the one piece of music from each of you personally I should put on that playlist? That one piece of music you would never want to miss on such an endeavor. And each of our guests puts one piece of music on that playlist. So it's quite populated. So Major Tom is already taken.
Yeah, but Fly Me to the Moon, I'm sure as well.
We have classical music. We have Iron Maiden on it. We have Major Tom, David Bowie, of course. We have Taylor Swift, Madonna, whatever.
I'd probably bring a Sex Pistols song then.
Okay. Anarchy in
the UK.
That's good.
Anarchy in space. I don't know, just to break up all the other tunes.
Anarchy in the UK is it?
And I'll choose the other end and choose Claire de Lune.
Claire de Lune.
Claire de Lune, good. That is a very nice fit, Claire de Lune and Anarchy in the UK. So if you're on the same ship, maybe you should wear headphones.
At least we get the whole span right. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Imagine if we chose Anarchy in the UK, both of us.
Yeah. That would be boring.
I have one last question to the two of you. This place, the show is called the Space Cafe Podcast. It's a coffee place where we sit together and talk about things. And in coffee places, now and then you have an espresso, a strong brew of coffee to energize yourself. Now I challenge you to share an espresso for the mind with me, with the audience. Something, an idea or a thought or whatever kind of topic you want to pick, you think could be a powerful inspiration for our listeners. Who wants to start?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's so easy to be kind of, smart about it. I think
it's a good question.
I think I wrote somewhere, in the nighttime, sometimes you think that, this is really intelligent, or this is, I have to remember this. And then you have
Exactly.
and then you have all these, and you fill all these books with, and you look at it and you say, that was not so intelligent. But, but I wrote once, there is, and I wrote it in Swedish, so I have to translate it at the same time, but there is really nothing to gain except experiences, and there is really nothing to lose except time.
Fantastic.
That's
Beautiful.
the only value we have. It's time.
Time and experiences. Beautiful. Emil, time is ticking. The clock is ticking for you.
We only have that much time, but it's
already. You want to borrow
already.
my book, Emil? You want to borrow my book?
Yeah, that would be nice. That's a really difficult one. No, you only regret what you didn't do. It's much easier. It's much better to regret things that you've done that you did than things you didn't do.
I understood that nobody regrets that it didn't work more.
Yes, beautiful. Love it. Beautiful.
Then I couldn't work more, so there's hard to regret.
Yeah.
Now this is, guys, this is mind-blowingly interesting. You're a very inspiring duo, a great partnership. Thanks for taking the time and being on the show, Mikael and Emil.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Lovely to meet you as well. You're also I think your comments were very inspiring as well.
Thank you.
It was a treat to meet you. Let's meet again when you come to Sweden.
What a fantastic story, right? So to quote Emil again, if you want something bad enough, no matter how crazy it is, it will happen at some point. And the Moonhouse is a fantastic proof that any crazy idea can see the light of day at some point when the stars align. So thanks for joining, my friends. If, again, I keep repeating myself, if you feel like this could be something that your friends may enjoy, your wife, your husband, and whatnot, why don't you just share the link with them and share our little Space Cafe podcast universe with them. Thanks for your loyalty. We love the growth of the show. It's episode 131 already. This is crazy. I mean, like, we started it 5 years ago out of necessity. We had too much time on our hands during the early days of the pandemic. And now, without dropping a single episode, we are already in episode 131. Thank you, everyone out there. Really, you personally, that you're listening right now. You're making this happen. You're making me happy. And let's go for another couple of 100 episodes, will we? So, without further ado, this is it for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you in 2 weeks from now. Bye-bye.